Welcome back to the X-Files, where we've just gained access to a heavily requested file, one featuring battles set in Japan's underworld filled with Yakuza and Yokai. Let's boot up this file. Full name, Ayashimon, created by Yuji Kaku. Start date, November 15th, 2021. End date, May 30th, 2022. Total chapters 25. For the English translation, we have a few people to thank, including Adrian Beck for translation, Brandon Bovia on lettering, Sean Carrico for design, and Ray First, as well as Andrew Kure-Bartosh for editing. Yuji Kaku has had a pretty long and storied career, wanting to become a mangaka in his youth, but he would temporarily let go of his dream, becoming an editor for Akita Shoten in Weekly Shonen Champion in 2007 to 2008, with him working on at least Ganso Ureyasu Tekken Kazoku during his time there. For those unaware, Shonen Champion is one of Shonen Jump's rival magazines, featuring hits like Baki the Grappler and Welcome to Demon School Iruma for a couple of popular current examples. The info on Kaku's early days can be found in things like interviews, and I'll be citing one where he talks to Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk, here and there throughout this video. Here he mentions attending a puppet theatre club while in high school and not attending art school at all. You might get the sense, like me, from this interview that Kaku loves manga a ton, but perhaps wasn't sure he could make it in the industry. There's a level of self-doubt to be seen here, but he did power through, perhaps due to being surrounded by so many mangaka while being an editor. Kaku would then gather his courage and pick up the pen once again to follow his childhood dream. This would result in a slew of one-shots starting in 2009 with The Remembrance Tax in Jump Square 2 Issue 3 in August of 2009. This would be a part of the 14th Jump Square Comic Grand Prix and would get an Honorable Mention award. It would also see a widespread release years later in 2018 through Jump Plus, and would be a work tackling the idea of two people meeting in the afterlife and realizing there's a limit to what mementos they can take with them. In the following Jump Square 2 Issue 4, debuting in January of 2010, the one-shot Return of the Toxicist would be published following a student who awaits the return of their master to their village, with it all having something to do with poison. Jumping from one Jump Square spin-off magazine to the next, we now arrive at Jump Square 19's June issue of 2011, featuring the one-shot A Hard Day's Run that sees its protagonist being chased down by an assassin. A quick side note here, the Jump Square side magazine's naming conventions are insane. Trying to search for Jump Square 2 Issue 3 of X year is very silly when you also just have regular Jump Square, and then you have Jump Square 19, which was not released in 2019, I can tell you that much. Yuji Kaku would then move to the regular Jump Square magazine for 2011's December issue with Spetsnaz Triglav, a sci-fi one-shot set in a world where aliens have invaded with rising sea levels. Jump Square issue 7 of 2012 would then see Bad Swing debut, a one-shot which would become a short serial about a year later in Jump Square in 2013. This would be Phantasma, which would run for 11 chapters and 3 volumes. Lasting for about a year within the magazine, and like its one-shot, it would follow a boy named Nero in a colourful mafia setting with supernatural elements. This premise is actually pretty similar to the main manga we'll be talking about today, Ayashimon, but Kaku would release a few more things before we get there. In Jump Square Crown winter issue of 2016, a few years later the one-shot Prison Princess would debut, which would see the princess of a kingdom escape the Demon Lord's castle. Reading through this and other one-shots, it's pretty clear that Yuji Kaku is pretty adept at conveying all manner of tones. He started with some more bitter emotional stuff, but through Phantasma and Prison Princess, there's a level of whimsy and heart that shines through. As he would create more and more, I think these elements begin to intersect and mesh with each other a lot too. While working on Fire Punch as an assistant for Tatsuki Fujimoto, he would put out the one-shot Evil Heart in Jump Square Crown's winter issue of 2017. This follows the living weapon Deathclaw, who's fallen in love with the hero Astro Wink. The work is a pretty heartwarming little story, and I love how its romance elements contrast with Kaku's darker, scratchy art style. Some ideas from this one-shot would likely make their way into Yuji Kaku's next series, debuting in Jump Plus in early 2018, with that being Jigokuraku or Hell's Paradise. This is the manga that put Yuji Kaku on the map. After a decade of struggling within the industry, battling self-doubt, the trends of the time, and finally embracing his own interests, he created a huge success. It would span 13 volumes, get bonus one-shots, novels, stage play performances, and an anime which has a season 2 set to release in early 2026. So much of Yuji Kaku's story has already played out. I think many people believe him to be a newer author, but he'd struggled for a full decade before entering the limelight, and I felt it was important to illustrate all of this. After getting to the top of the manga world, Yuji Kaku would set his sights on the biggest magazine of all, Weekly Shonen Jump, so let's see what he ended up bringing to the table. Chairman Kyo of the Enma Syndicate has died, sending the Yakuza across the Kanto region into a period of turmoil. But these ain't your average Yakuza, they're Yokai or Ayashimon, blending the Japanese criminal underworld with the folkloric one. In a chance meeting, the totally ordinary Maruo Kaido, a boy who can lift cars with ease and smash rocks many sizes above him, meets the beautiful and enigmatic Urara. Having lived a life of hardship where he feels out of place with his superhuman strength, he feels he has finally found his home amongst the supernatural Yakuza, swearing fealty to his new elder sister, who seems shocked that this mere human can go toe-to-toe with various actual monsters. Ayashimon begins with a rush of energy, introducing us to a super likable duo of outsiders who plan to bring the inhabitants of Shinjuku to their knees. The combination of Yakuza, Yokai, and a zany jump-loving protagonist was all I really needed for me to instantly fall in love with it. Quickly though, it builds on its premise, revealing Urara to be the bastard child of the late Chairman Kyo, who she figures was murdered. Her goal is clear-cut revenge, take back her family, kill her father's murderer, and eradicate the entire syndicate with them, and she's going to use Maruo as a pawn to do so. First off though, the two must enter Shinjuku, which means fighting its gate guardian, so to speak, Hashihime, an ally of Urara's who only wants to see her safe. But Urara sicks Maruo on her for a fight. Hashihime's design is immaculate, she's super cool, her hair and suit are just chef's kiss as well. She also gives us the lowdown on the many factions of the story after being beaten. There are 4 main groups who've laid claim to the city, and I'm always a sucker when a series throws a bunch of different groups at you like this. It's great at building excitement for what's to come. Anybody familiar with the Yakuza series of games, or Ryuga Gotoku, will surely smile at the next part as we get to go to Kabukicho, and isn't this gate mighty familiar? The world building on display in these initial chapters is so playful. Japan's own den of sin, Kabukicho, full of gambling, sex, and silly side quests, actually being a hub for Ayashimon just makes complete sense. I love all the different designs here and the little gags that play out in the background, like this Tanuki using his shape-shifting balls to mimic a hostess. If you enjoyed this part of the manga, this specific spread and pages, it's a good benchmark I think if you'll enjoy the whole series or not. It's silly, it's a bit gritty, and its construction is rooted in the real world as well as mythology, giving it a sense of believability, like it's all lived in. Now wandering the city, the two get into some fights, one with the fire yokai Inokuma Nyodo, and then a ritual duel with an Ayashimon named Amame Hagi. I might as well gush over ritual duels here since they're some of my favourite parts of the series, as well as Maruo's favourite part probably. 2 fighters agree to a one-on-one, an official test of strength where the winner's wishes are upheld no matter what. There's a level of honour in this which fits the romanticised view the Yakuza often possess in media, as well as its traditional aspects fitting the folklore well too. The drums beating and the spectacle of it gives these moments a ton of weight, plus each time someone utters the line, "I do hereby challenge thee, man to man, to a battle of guts, a battle of souls," it fires me up endlessly because it's so self-serious, and then you have the contrast. Maruo's attitude and enthusiasm to these only make the duels better. He's so excited to fight and participate even when he gets clonked on the head with a hammer. His expression for that is pure elation. It's fun, builds his character, and acts as great comedy too. As fun as Ayashimon is generally though, the chaos of Kabukicho balances its pleasure with a darker side, and this is where our villain, Akari Doppo, comes in. Current chairman of the Emma Syndicate, he is in Urara's sights. But not only is he a big foil for her, but similar to Maruo, he has an obsession with the arts too. This ties into his absolute sadism. Previous chapters have established that should an Ayashimon perish, they will just turn into coins and reappear in 99 years. What Doppo does to Ayashimon he's displeased with is he transforms them into living pieces of art so they're unable to rebirth, stuck in a singular form for all eternity. He makes a great first impression, and I remember being pretty wowed reading it weekly that something so twisted was printed in the pages of Jump at the time. Equally, I was surprised that almost instantly, Doppo is given info on our protagonists and proceeds to hunt them down. What follows is an unwinnable battle as Maruo goes up against the final boss. Doppo is unhittable and burns people with an icy flame that steals heat. He hits our protagonist blow after blow until he's a bloody pulp. This encounter illuminates the main cast a little bit more. All harbour a certain level of sadness and abandonment. The vaguest of all is Doppo, who seems crestfallen at hearing that Urara is Chairman Kyo's child. Urara here also had to comprehend with the fact that she didn't really know her dad. We get a short amount of backstory showing he never visited her in the human world even once, and it was only because of Hashihime that Urara managed to hold on. Maruo, on the other hand, seems to have lived with an abusive father, shown no love, he was left beaten day after day, and it's because of this horrid childhood that he developed his manga protagonist mentality. We'll touch on all of this again a bit later, but this fight is great for sowing some character building seeds, giving us some action and showing us that Doppo is not to be messed with. While the loss the crew just suffered is bitter, due to Maruo's attitude and him getting the newest issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, he is reinvigorated and his outlook infects his elder sister. He still wants to help her more than ever. He wants to settle her issues surrounding her father, be they related to revenge or her muddled feelings of abandonment. They tattoo up, rest up, and begin their plan to ally with some other groups in order to amass enough power to strike down Doppo. I want to do a little impromptu side section here, as there are some elements of this series you might not be familiar with if you don't know much about Yakuza stories. Throughout this video, I'll be calling Urara elder sister at points, and this is a nod to how the Yakuza kind of refer to themselves, I think. Usually they'll refer to each other in a lot of cases as Aniki, a kind of respectful but brotherly sibling kind of way of talking to someone.
だって兄貴は兄貴じゃないですか。お前は流動一家の若頭だろう。俺はお前の兄貴分でも何でもない。まあ、その話はいいとして。よくない。お前みたいな奴に兄貴と呼ばれたら、うちの子供たちに悪影響だろうが。別にいいじゃないですか。俺は兄貴の強さと男気に惚れたんです。俺にとって兄貴は兄貴なんです。
And I think Maruo calling Urara elder sister is Ayashimon's way of showing this respect. She isn't his actual elder sister, so I want to quell any confusion there. The other thing I want to mention is Yakuza back tattoos. There is a lot of depth and history surrounding them, which I'm not privy to, but I think the basics are a tattoo shows commitment as well as a kind of personal touch. You will get a tattoo, I think, that shows kind of what you want to embody in yourself and show the world, so these tattoos are very important. In the case of Maruo and Urara, they kind of have a shared tattoo, showing their bond, I guess, and I think it's of an Oni. An interesting touch is on Maruo's you have horns and Urara's you don't, maybe showing that Maruo is more of the fighter, but in a weird way, the human is the one with the more monstrous tattoo, which I think is pretty interesting. If I thought about this more and really sat down and read into Yakuza tattoos, I could probably spend quite a few minutes yapping about all of this, but I do just want to bring it up since it's often an important piece of any Yakuza story. Back to the crew hunting down allies, the first off that list is the Todoroki Alliance, a group of bikers who has strong ties to Chairman Kyo through their boss Cotton. Without hesitation, he joins up due to Urara revealing she was Kyo's bastard daughter, but he asks her to toss aside Maruo and Ten, a lackey they picked up along the way who I haven't mentioned, but I do like a great deal. He's just not as notable as some of the other things going on. This leads to another duel. There's a lot of character building, and Cotton is really cool with his biker aesthetic. He reminds me of Kamen Rider with the scarf, which feels fitting and in line with the other references the manga makes. We get hints at what Chairman Kyo was about here through some backstory, and it seems he acted as a father figure to Cotton too. This is never delved into much, but fatherhood dynamics as well as familial elements in general seem to stew behind the scenes, and they would have likely been more prominent as the series progressed. Which makes sense, as a lot of gang or mafia or Yakuza stories often have family as a sub-theme or major theme. After this, the Urara gang, now bolstered by 2,000 bikers, scouts the other major factions, finding the host club, the Ayakashi Beastars, have been taken out by a rival gang, or cabaret club, Club Undine. The world is built out more here, like a chess game, factions shuffle and change allegiances in the background. So the crew go to another group, Kori Hotels, to seek another alliance. I love how each major faction is focused around a different element of nightlife. The settings and characters are reflective of these, and they let the manga run through varied as well as fun scenarios. For the hotel, there's a raid which involves both sides fighting without disturbing any guests. I get a lot of joy from Ayashimon's often simple 1v1 duels, but I'm glad it gets creative with its conflicts like this as well. And speaking about creativity, this entire hotel, which is run by a lot of tanuki, is of course one massive ballsack. To reiterate, tanuki are illusory beings in folklore, and they can transform their nuts into anything, and this is taken to the extremes here for comedic sake, but I appreciate how intertwined it is within the setting. This is also the final battleground for the series, as a newly trained up Maruo fights against the hotel leadership Tamagawa. Tamagawa is a tanuki, so he of course has a transformation ability, and what he turns into is the main antagonist, the final boss himself, Akari Doppo. A copy complete with all of his abilities and final transformation, so in a twist we get to fight the big bad without actually having to meet him again. It's a good compromise for a cancelled works ending. Going back in time a bit, while Urara and Ko are visiting Club Undine and looking into Kori hotels, Maruo was training under the supervision of an unhoused Ayashimon guru. Like the Ryuga Gotoku series, I do like that the series touches on this group of people and approaches them with a level of respect. It also acts as another varied location the series visits and shows humans and Ayashimon living in harmony, an element of the series I would have loved to see explored more. Training arcs can always be a little contentious. They're often pretty dull and are hard to balance, but upon rereading, I really like how Ayashimon approaches this. Maruo needs to be Doppo, and to do so he needs to learn how to punch fire itself. To do so he must punch the very concept, which can only be done through visualization. The physical aspect of this training is about grabbing chestnuts which haven't popped in flame. There's a deeper core to this which relates to the nature of Ayashimon themselves. Ayashimon are concepts made manifest, yokai which embody a humanoid form through the strong emotions of humans. This used to come about through folk tales and fear, though in recent years money is where human emotions lie, in greed and gratitude. But at their core, yokai are beings born from concepts. They are the explanation for the unexplained. Something creeping in the darkness we give a name so we can sleep with ease. Thus, it makes sense that Maruo learn how to touch and hit the very idea of concepts, like the concept of heat or fire, in order to hit Doppo. I think there's an even deeper level to this though, and I'm going to circle back to that interview I brought up earlier between Kaku and Miura. In this interview, they talk about all kinds of things. There's a substantial portion where they talk about creating manga and drawing. A part of this is going into understanding things, how they work, so you can then visualize and conceptualize to create a drawing with a level of realism so it's more believable and immersive. I can't help but put two and two together after reading it. The wise old sage preaching advice sounds a bit like Miura here. What's more, as we get deeper into the battle with fake Doppo, Maruo is hit by a devastating attack and ends up in a death-like state. We're then given a bizarre fourth wall-breaking opening to a chapter where Ayashimon is being made. The manga we are reading is being created before our very eyes. Kaku is equated to being like Maruo here, further pushing this parallel to the interview. The interview is also full of the two mangaka nerding out over various series they loved and feel are pivotal to the cultural landscape of manga. Similarly, Ayashimon has the same reverence, and I haven't mentioned it much, but it's full of references to media Yuji Kaku adores. You've got things outside of manga that's important, like Ultra 7, Kamen Rider, and then you have stuff like Gegege no Kitaro mentioned, which is apt due to its focus on yokai. Some Weekly Shonen Champion manga are referenced, likely because of Kaku's stint as an editor, like Baki the Grappler, directly with this chopstick reference. Doppo may also be a nod to a character from that series as well. The Ayakashi B-Stars may also be a nod to another Champion manga which was pretty popular. But then you get all the Jump references, which are everywhere. Maro directly references Shonen Jump manga over and over. It's a huge influence on him. It's why he's alive and struggling, because so many of his favorite protagonists struggled before him. Yuji Kaku is the same. For years he struggled in the manga industry, and there's a level of apprehension in this interview, a lack of confidence. This is apparent from the beginning of his career as well, where he chose the path of an editor first, not knowing if he could make it as a fully fledged manga artist. Maro looks up to his heroes like Kenshiro, Goku, and Jotaro, and equally, I think Yuji Kaku looks up to Tetsuo Ohara, Akira Toriyama, and Hirohiko Araki. Despite potentially not feeling up to par, despite losing so many times, so to speak, getting his series Phantasma cancelled, or taking a long time to get a serialization at all, Kaku persevered. In the dream sequence within the manga, there's a part where Kaku or Maruo mentions wanting to kill off their protagonist, like Joe Yabuki in Ashita no Joe or Jonathan Joestar in JoJo Part 1. It's part of the ideal of the old shonen protagonist. Maybe wrapped up in all of this is a desire to let go, to throw in the towel because the manga's already been cancelled by this point. And yet this is interweaved into the narrative through Maruo's character arc of him wanting to be like his heroes, and Maruo says no. A shonen protagonist gets up again and again. It's one of their biggest virtues, and in the same way, Yuji Kaku has gotten up again and again too, so he isn't going to end this manga without a fight. Ayashimon throughout its run touches on something very special, I feel, the importance of media and of manga, and how we can use it to prop ourselves up, learn from it, or just feel. One of my favourite pages of the series is this one after the fight with Koton, where Maruo is wrapped up in a dream. He's a small child here, beaten and bruised, but reading manga alone in a dingy room, and then the older, current-aged Maruo comes rushing in, punching a huge hole into the wall. The younger Maruo looks up to the current one and smiles wildly. I think everyone has undergone their fair share of tragedy. Everyone has gone through something that weighs on them, some past or even present, that has and will leave lingering scars. But this is a moment of reflection where Maruo has fulfilled his past self, an inner child. He survived and became the hero he always wanted to be. There's a nurturing element to this small blink and you'll miss it scene that wordlessly adds so much to Maruo's character and Ayashimon as a whole. It encapsulates how important perseverance is, but also what motivates us to keep us going, and manga is as fine a means of motivation as any. Beneath all of this, I feel the series whisper to me that art has the power to save our souls, which includes your favorite old battle shonen as well. There is a palpable love of manga that can be felt throughout Ayashimon that goes beyond being merely referential. Maruo learns that beyond surface level strength and enjoyment of the manga he loves, that there is connection. Sharing manga, sharing moments with those he's close to, is really why he's alive and keeps getting back up. Back when he was alone, when he suffered abuse at the hands of his neglectful father, he may not have known it then, but in not giving up, he'd eventually meet people who would care for him, who he can share these moments of camaraderie and joy in. And the same can be said for Urara, who waited and waited and eventually found family once again too. Connecting with others is what the manga is all about, which can be done on a person-to-person basis, but it can also be done through art. In the same way Maruo connects to manga and to others, we connect to him, we connect to Yuji Kaku and other readers through the very act of reading and talking about this work. In fact, what you are doing right now by watching a video of me talking about manga is a form of connection through art. Ayashimon is most definitely a series that Yuji Kaku made to cater to himself, but that doesn't mean it's just for him. He wants to show us what he loves, why he loves it, in an effort to connect. I firmly believe this is how all artists and art operates. It's all a process of communication. And getting a bit poetic here, sure, a concise story with a fulfilling ending is nice, but what if a work reaches you regardless and makes you feel something, even without a proper ending? Do you arbitrarily discard that piece of media or art? Do you mechanically knock a few points off and say you enjoyed it with the caveat that its lack of a proper ending ruins it entirely? Rereading Ayashimon solidified my feelings regarding art and especially axed manga. I adore them like any other work, perhaps despite or because of their lack of proper endings, as often they'll have elements that are just as profound or enjoyable as a finished work. I don't think this perspective will click with everyone, which is fine, but I'm really glad I got to revisit one of my favorite Jump manga and found it hits even harder than I remember. Moving on to other aspects of the series I like, of course I love its unfiltered joy for manga and its pretty deep-cut Shonen Jump references. Where else will a work point back to the Gutsy Frog, Mon Mon Mon, Ringly Kakuro, countless old issues of Jump, and the biggest one of all, Bakuhatsu's Space Bear, Tata Bear, and Kikuchio-kun. That's a pretty deep fucking cut if I say so myself. If you watch the channel at all and have seen the Jump history videos, you'll know all of this is my jam. While I'm not as knowledgeable, the references and integration of various yokai was done pretty well too, and I always loved hearing the little bits of folklore related to them. On an artistic level, I adore Yuji Kaku's scratchy art style. It's kinetic and there's a lot of gritty impact when fights are initiated. The supernatural and crime elements are a good fit too, since it's pretty dark, stylistically speaking, and some illustrations like Doppo's messed up art gallery are pretty frightening. Depicting horror is a high point for Kaku in his art, but so is comedy, I think. There's a lot of really good silly scenes in Ayashimon. Generally, it has good comedic timing, good comedic dialogue, and much of it stems from some of the expressions the characters make. Good comedy is often the gateway to good characters too, through them interacting, and I think Urara's disapproval and big sis energy towards Maruro does a lot to build out their relationship. He's for real a big destructive golden retriever dog she has to manage and teach constantly because he's very dumb, and I find this setup oh so endearing. One more thing I want to mention here is, out of the many things that don't really get expanded on throughout the series, Neneko, the kappa who loves shoujo manga, is the thing I wanted to see more of. I'm sure a fight or conversation between her and Maruro would have been very interesting, with them both being fans of manga, but of different demographics. Now that I'm done with my praises, I do want to acknowledge that Ayashimon was cancelled, and I'm not blind to its shortcomings, even if I think some are exaggerated by people online. The manga itself might be self-aware of some of it to an extent. It's mentioned in the fourth wall-breaking dream that Maruro is a pretty simple character, and the series itself might have a dated quality to it, relying on topics like the Yakuza and Yokai in a way that's pretty evocative of older stories. It of course has modern flair, but I think it's fair to say other things were trending harder at the time of its release. I don't enjoy touching on sales much in my videos, and I won't give an exact figure here, but Ayashimon from memory did okay in this regard. The problem is though, just okay might not have been enough for an established author. Sometimes Jump will give a veteran a bit more leeway than average, but for others there might be a certain expectation for a series, and if that's not met, it may be a major factor in them considering it for cancellation. I'm not sure how much this might have played into everything, but Ayashimon also went on hiatus for 1 week on account of Yuji Kaku's health. I believe this might have been for pandemic reasons, but this rarely happens with non-established series. They seldom get any breaks, so you can speculate a lot on this, but without a doubt it probably did hurt the production of the manga behind the scenes. No idea if this would have a major impact on it being cancelled, but I thought it would be worth bringing up. As always, the state of the magazine at the time is what I tend to focus on in regards to a work's cancellation. Ayashimon would end alongside Protect Me Shugamaru, and Aliens Area and Ruri Dragon would debut in their place. This was a period where many currently established series now were still growing, like Blue Box, Sakamoto Days, and Witch Watch. They were all doing quite well too, so space for new things was quite slim. I do feel like Earthchild in hindsight could have met with a quicker end, or maybe instead Ayashimon's batchmate Doron Dororon, but perhaps that was being kept as it was more appealing to children. Swapping out High School Family prematurely may have also been an option, but issues arise here with that series being more unique in the magazine being a gag manga, while Ayashimon was another battle shonen which the magazine had plenty of. I do find Ayashimon's cancellation a bit of a misstep though. I think it would have been worth gambling on it as it was well put together, had the name of a currently popular author on it, and it wasn't doing horrible by any means, but due to various reasons we're not really privy to, the decision was made to cut it. We've now heard my thoughts on the series and a bit of criticism, plus the status of the magazine at the time, but what about everyone else? Do others share in my enjoyment? Have people seen something I missed or take issue in elements I don't? Let's check the messages I've received from the rest of the X-Files division. Befitting its general vibe online, a lot of people expressed their love and enjoyment for Ayashimon. Some messages, like from Chut Frumpus or TG, were short but very, very positive. Others dug into things a bit more. Fullmetal, for example, cited its artwork and characters in general to be high points, though they mention enjoying every single moment reading and were glad it existed, so some people are definitely on the same wavelength as me. Digging into its phrases a bit more, Mark brings up Maruo's purity, simplicity, and love of manga as a big draw to the character. Others seem to think so too, which I think makes sense. Most people that are commenting are big fans of manga and Shonen Jump, since that's the focal point of this channel and the Discord server. Hence they're likely to like and emphasize with a fellow fan. Mark also points to Dobbo as a favourite character for being a rat bastard. Demon Summoning Enthusiast heavily mentioned Dobbo in their review too, making him a bit of a fan favourite character, though the cast in general was well loved. They put some focus on the villains in this review, citing them as being active within the story, which made them feel more threatening, believable, and thus the story more engaging. The manga ending prematurely and leaving much of Doppo's resolution or development out was a big shame to them, as we never get to learn why he changed so much. On the subject of characters, still, Demon Summoning Enthusiast makes a crucial point, I feel. If you don't like Maruo and don't vibe with him, then it's likely the series will fall flat to you, since he's so upfront and loud as a character. His simplicity may not win you over, especially if you find his love of manga annoying or don't click with it. A lot of my analysis was centered around him throughout the video, but love for other characters is present too, from myself and others, like for Urara. A few people cite her as being a favourite, but Demon Summoning Enthusiast puts it well here that her struggles with being Kyo's daughter, being ruthless and a leader, was well contrasted against her growing affection and heart towards her companions. Her arc or character may not have been the loudest, but it was very well done, and I failed to bring that up much in my main review. Moving on, let's talk about expectation, and a viewpoint I wasn't privy to, as despite my love for Ayashimon and me having read up on Kaku for this video, I haven't actually read Hell's Paradise at all, so going in I didn't know what to expect from this series back in 2021. Others did have a level of expectation though, having read Hell's Paradise previously, like Jay Vaso and James the Gamer. Both seemed to like Ayashimon a great deal, though were saddened with its sudden ending. Jay Vaso does bring up that Hell's Paradise being so big at the time likely raised expectations on a reader level even more than I might have anticipated, compounding factors leading to its cancellation. Walt Hitchcock also brings up the manga landscape at the time, where some of the biggest series were, and arguably still are, darker supernatural battle series set in urban settings like JJK or Chainsaw Man. Ayashimon, despite fitting in this niche, I don't think was aiming to compete, but regardless, the expectations for it too were likely still there. To close us out, a few people brought up Maruo's backstory and the intersection of his love of manga versus the abuse he suffered in his childhood. It didn't land with everyone. Jesus Flash mentioned it feeling corny rather than sincere at points, and wished the series was a bit more consistent with its tone. Heretic wished it was leaned into a bit more. I think this sentiment was held by a few others too, who wanted it to embrace a darker tone or commit to the Yakuza parts a bit more as well. Witchara found Maruo's backstory compelling. The way we see Maruo moving past trauma through the use of manga might be relatable for a lot of folks reading. I also like the way Witchara approaches money as a potential theme. They make an interesting point about how Ayashimon literally need money to live, which would intersect with the crime elements in all sorts of fascinating ways. There is definitely a commentary on humans or Ayashimon or whatever needing money to survive and the desperate situations that might put us in. Perhaps we had a bit of a bias sample this time, but everyone seemed to really enjoy Ayashimon, or at least appreciated multiple elements of its construction. Many people seemed deeply saddened by its cancellation as well, or felt it was unjustified and wanted to express that too, and I'm right there with them. Even with its abrupt ending, having reread the series, I feel very content, as if we were at the end of a story. There's a certain narrative arc that I think has already played out with Yuji Kaku, the struggle of becoming a mangaka, getting a hit with Hell's Paradise, and then following it up with something self-indulgent and referential. It didn't stick the landing, but the emotion Ayashimon exhibited reached me, and I no longer feel like I need more from it. I appreciated the journey I did go on with it immensely. Yuji Kaku also seems to have moved on, doing a one-shot for Jigokuraku in the interim, but not much else, although there are rumblings they've been working on a big project in the background for some time, and whatever it is, I eagerly await it. And that brings this axe file on Ayashimon to a close. Do you have any thoughts on the series, whether it be criticism or more praise for it? I'm aware it was a pretty popular series for an axe title. It even got an official English release, so I'm sure a lot of people have something to say about it. If you'd like to discuss cancelled manga or manga generally with like-minded people, I'll leave a link to the Axe Files office's Discord in the description too. If this is your first axe file from me, I have plenty of others on a variety of cancelled manga, both new and old. And as I alluded to earlier, I also frequently talk about the older manga from Weekly Shonen Jump in my History of Shonen Jump series. There I go through the magazine year by year, looking into the bigger hits as well as older axes that time has forgotten. Please check all of that out if it's your jam, and also consider subscribing, ringing the bell, liking and sharing the video, as all of those things help out a ton. I wouldn't be able to make these videos without all the support I've received so far, but especially the support from my patrons. For as little as $1 a month, you can join them in helping me make videos like this, and you'll also get to vote in exclusive polls to decide future axe files, as well as get a collection of patron-only videos. If you pledge at the $3 tier or higher, you'll also get a unique little doodle drawn by me to represent yourself in the credits of my videos, like the following cool people. Thank you, Trinity, Jade, Kaizoku Gairu, Sora Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lay Sloggett, Chris P. Bacon, Cho Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Yozakura Psycho, Wuzzle, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vina Burrito, Capping Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, Hong, Jamie Reynolds, Manu, Pokeemblem, James Miller, Joba Monkey, Just a Virus, Star Sphinx, PK Broly, Fenrir Black, Elijah Espinoza, Neo Humanoid, Mark Nielsen, Electro Pirate, Jay Vasso, Three Frogs in a Trenchcoat, Sir Flash, Gay Shark, Slimy Okra, Giddista, TG Talks Manga, Wavy Sky, John Jerry 722, Andrew, Zenomat, Miskal, Hilltop, Vako Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, Jaime, Strawberry Prosione, Vaz, Palette, Ruina, Juice, Kuromi Nox, Eric Gorski, Mr. Shira, Grizz Exploder, Dextora, Enio Shoo, Cheese, Emmy, and Benjamin. Again, thank you so much for being patrons. And as always, thank you all for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.